are also the panel with a little gimmick, which I brought, which is this this little toy for 3 years old, symbol of this day, and also of the balancing act, which clearly the EPC has been and will be. Every person in this panel has a certain history and experience on public versus private and the balancing act of that. And I would like to ask Martina for some reflection and on this topic and which dimensions should be taken into account, and how is this balance in the reality, because you have been there and you have many experience there.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, it's an interesting question, and as you said, we all have our own experiences, so I won't make general statements. I can just make the statements out of the EPI experience or EPI perspective. And there, first of all, I think when we started thinking about this idea of creating a European payment solution, it started with a statement, which is, well, it will be difficult. It will be difficult because the market is very mature. And the next what I would say natural first conclusion was it will take a public-private partnership to succeed, because the challenge will be so high, so difficult. And also because, Europe is a special environment with already existing rules, already existing solutions, a lot of competitors, very big competitors and powerful competitors. And if we want to make something happen there for Europe, then we need this alignment. So I think it started with this idea, and the second, I would say, an element of this idea of public-private partnership was to say the private sector felt the need from the market, or the need from the merchant and the consumer side, and the need to become more competitive. And on the other side, the question, what are the expectations of the public sector, or what are the expectations from a policy perspective? So for us, I think one of the fundamental elements in the founding of everything that has been elaborated were the retail payment strategies.
This sort of disconnect or between policies and that how we can improve that, or whether you recognize that situation when policies are not fully aligned, and also how did you experience these type of processes of the past years on this?
Yes. I think payments is perhaps the domain where this burden sharing or tasks sharing between public and private is the more, let's say, predominant model, at least since the EPC and SEPA was created. It has been like this, a sharing between tasks which have to be carried out by the public. That means, for example, building a legal framework, giving guidelines, giving limits, accelerating the development when necessary, with a SEPA end date, for example, enforcing the rules. So this has been the domain, and rightly so, the domain of the public sector. And again, rightly so, designing the payment instruments has been done by the market, as is normally
and the financing as well, right?
And the financing.
In Martina's explanation is that there may be a vision of let's say in Brussels and here and the top management of banks and other institutions, but then bringing it to the member states and bringing it to the ground and really bringing over that vision, that it really can be executed, because on the ground is where it happens in all the member states. And that's at least a learning I get, at least from the SEPA experience, that has been fixed over time. And is that something we can also, let's say, preempt a bit more, that type of, let's say, collaborative thoughts and vision to involve in another way the member states?
Maybe. I don't know. We should maybe ask member states what they think. But I think in the Commission and in the ECB, we've put black and white on paper what is our strategy, and we have made it very clear that we alone, Commission or ECB, cannot and will not achieve these objectives without everyone playing their role. So, in a way, we are calling on everyone to play their part.
And would like to ask Evelien, from the perspective of, let's say, the central bank here. It's also the public side. And where are the let's say, how is the perspective different when you are in a central bank looking at this?
Not Ulrich. So Ulrich, so I joined really the ECB only 5 months ago. So I can tell from experience that you have some idea how it would look like if you are in I would say another silo within the payments industry, and if you're inside, it looks slightly different than you would have thought from the outside. But I think in what has been mentioned before, I think what the ECB does on top of having the framework, we also provide some part of the infrastructure, real foundation to make sure that payments can be done. So target 2 was related to tips. So in addition to what was said by Eric, having the common framework, I think that is also something what the ECB does. And I think what I notice from moving from being in the payments industry to being within the ECB is I thought the ECB was one institute, but in essence it is the governing council consists of all the member states. So also coming to that point, everything is discussed with all the member states, and also, for example, the digital euro, we have a project governance internally, which consists from a project steering group, high-level task force, which consists of all the member states. So there we do try also there to get the views, and it was said this morning, that there are differences in countries in payment habits. It's at least one part of the puzzle and structure that is there in place to see that we can take these things on board early on.
And in our fast-moving world, I mean, you are relatively short indeed on your new job also. Do you have certain thoughts about the balance of public-private or certain aspects which need more attention going forward?
Well, what we I think what has been said, but what maybe is not always felt is, and at least we also, for example, in the digital euro, we really try to do this, to really have a dialogue. And what I experience, but I'm only there, is sometimes it seems like an exchange of positions instead of really a dialogue.
Fabrice, what do you think now after hearing, let's say, some public input, private input?
As Eric said, and some of my colleagues said, EPC was part of the history of public versus private cooperation. But also, I'm pretty sure I was there almost in the early years, in 2004, when I joined the EPC roundtable. We have learned how to work together between the public and private sector at the European level, because before it didn't exist. So that's the way we build things, and we have learned a lot. And I fully agree from ECB and European Commission perspective that in general, the principles, the framework are clear, and that's clearly in the hands of the regulators to pave the way, to design the principles at the political level and so on. But my experience is that, and the EPC experience has shown that it is not enough, because devil is in the detail, and we also need to work more closely, as you said, and with a dialogue, with some workshops and so on. And I remember in that building years of EPC, there was representatives from the Commission and from the ECB at every meetings, and they were really instrumental in a dialogue. Sometimes it was tough, believe me, but we managed to build something and to find always the consensus, even if it was difficult. And it was part of the real success that we achieved in that days. And coming back just a minute on the digital euro, on that, I agree that we need more dialogue and so on, but for this special project, my view, and I think this is shared by a lot of banks, including all over the world, we are still lacking what do we really want to achieve and why, in principle. Why do we feel, for the time being, with a lack of explanation and real reason why it is so urgent, and why do we want to achieve that? Sometimes we still feel that we have a solution that tries to fix a problem, but we don't know which problem. So I think if we lack to have a common view on, yes, we agree, there is something to do, that's the reason X, Y, Z, why we need to do, and we need to do it in that kind of agenda or time frame.
It's the vision
yes,
part
the
again.
vision, etc. If we miss that piece, which is the first layer, I would say, of principle framework and so on, which is where we are today, in my view, bank's view, let's say, it's difficult to move forward and to try to have a constructive dialogue and achieve something in due time frame.
Okay, maybe you want to reflect.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to summarize with my twist, with my angle, what has already been said. I must start saying that cooperation is unlikely. So it's not a natural status. So it's the exceptional state.
Cooperation.
Cooperation, yeah. I could say it's very much unlikely than non-cooperation. And I could say that equally as Adam Smith found the wealth of nations worthy of study, not the poverty of nations. So wealth is the exceptional status as cooperation. Why is it? And observing what the colleagues have expressed, I think it is because it is based on a serious, large number of conditions, all of which are necessary, none of which is sufficient. So starting with, I just wrote a number, a small number. First, trust. Of course, you need trust, but trust is not enough. Second, you need a reward for every participant party. A reward that can be a positive reward, a prize, or the avoidance of pain or damage. But something positive for every single participant.
Are we taking payments too narrow, or should we take it broader?
Looking to payments is probably not sufficient. On the other hand, connecting every dot with every dot is also making it maybe even more difficult, because indeed the devil is in the details. So I think it's good to have an understanding that things are connected with each other, but if we take the holistic view, you get stuck in the holistic view. That is a big risk, I would say. So I think it's good to be aware, but I would also say at some point scope and do a deep dive, and to make sure that you really touch upon the details that are there. Maybe coming back to your question, I think a couple of things I've said, but I think one thing that has changed is indeed there are different actors in the field. And everybody says this for years, but really the developments go much quicker. So that also means that that we all need to go quicker.
I think that's right, that we need to find the right way to go faster, because everything is going faster than...
What do you mean, faster decisions, faster meetings, shorter meetings?
No, what I wanted to say is that because innovation is continuous stuff, so we really need to adapt to that. But again, I think it's really important, because the world of payments is even more holistic and more complex. We really need to take care on whether we take the right decision or not, and the right direction. So the dialogue between the public and private sector is absolutely...
Collaboration, and there is indeed a need or a wish, strong wish for faster.
Collaboration, of course. Going fast, of course. That said, we are the Commission exactly of the general interest, in fact. So we have to strike the right balance. Of course, people who know me here know that I like dialogue, I like discussion, but there's one day where the Commission has to close the door and do its job. But before that moment, of course, cooperation has to be the word. via consultations, via dialogues, via discussions, in any form. But one day, it is up to us to define and put it in our proposals to define what we believe is the point of equilibrium representing the general interest. Then, of course, it will be subjected to the scrutiny, and that's very good. The scrutiny of the Parliament and the Council, and what will come out in the end might be different. But at least we will have fulfilled our role, which is to define what is, in our view, the general interest. My mission is to seek all the viewpoints and then do our job, which is, as I said, to propose what we believe is right. So that's in a way, partnership or cooperation doesn't mean to have 500 hands holding 500 pens. It's different. But cooperation has to happen upstream.
Because I think we have learned that cooperation is necessary, but again, it is not enough. I think we have learned something very fundamental, which is that we need to build trust. We need to nurture and take care of trust. And we need to learn how to feel when you are in the shoes of the other. That's for sure. But what makes this moment different is that while we feel proud of the work done and that we have progressed a lot, we have achieved a lot, only to find that we are entering into new territories we didn't know. And I regret to say that probably we don't fully know what to do in the future, because at the very beginning, with the SEPA story, I think at least the public sector had a clear idea on what they wanted. Maybe they were poor in their communication to the banks in those days, but certainly they had a clearer idea, and that helped a lot. Now we are as I said, in new territories, not because each piece is different, because we have instant payments. You may say, well, instant payments with a request to pay, well, it's new, but not that new. But it is fully new if that is in an environment of open data. Because that is absolutely new.
So you're saying the vision was way clearer 20 years ago?
Exactly. And we have created SEPA, which is like the foundations, the rails, and we have created that. We find that still what we have ahead is even less known than what we used to be, or what we used to have 20 years ago. So, and we know that the way forward will be by cooperation, but in a land where there are many opportunities, first we have to agree on which opportunities to explore.
The support, of course, I mean, for an initiative like EPI of the public sector is fundamental, and I know that the authorities know that, so it's not something new or different from what we have always said. I also understand that there are limits, and on the other side, I think the industry itself has to recognize what is its role and what are the targets. I can only say public support, public guidance, public leadership helps a lot. Clear guidance and how we are going to get there, instead of just losing us all in, let's do this, let's do that, and oh no, we don't spend money on here, because that's the future. No, I don't believe it. I mean, we are losing ourselves.
And this is a public-private
I think the clear guidance and alignment on where the priorities are and in which order would already help to make the whole shift easier for the industry.
There is an elephant in the room, is do we need public financing in payments to make happening a big project or not? I just double-checked that when we have at the European level within the policymakers, a strategic vision that something is really needed and really strategic, we make it happen, like the gigafactories for batteries, relocalize chip manufacturers.
There's instruments for this, huh?
Yeah. But I'm just checking that for payments, for the time being, we have not reached a kind of consensus that whether we need something, for example, to build an acceptance network, as Martina said, to build an Airbus for cards, for example. In the early days of EPC, we were talking about Airbus for cars, but it never took off, by the way. So that's an open question. I don't have the answer. Do we need that or not? Okay. But this is clearly something that we need to think about for the future. If we want to accelerate, do we need public funding or not? And if yes, how, with which kind of counterparts and
I
commitments.
don't think I have a lot to add. I do think that the topics that Martina said, for me, they are not unconnected. And sort of, okay, instant payments, digital euro, EID are completely different things that will not lead to something that is connected with each other. So I do understand the plea, but on the other hand, saying, okay, just say choose between one of these four, I think they like you asked maybe before, they are connected, and I think if you put them together, you have quite a nice view of how the future could look like.
So that sounds like speed up the whole thing, maybe. All right. Yeah, please give a big hand to this great panel. Thank you very much.